Hey, welcome everyone. Hey, this is a podcast that explores various aspects of addiction, potentially focusing on personal stories of recovery, scientific perspectives, societal impacts, or related topics. This podcast often features discussions with experts, individuals in recovery, therapists, and advocates to offer insights and support to those affected by addiction or seeking more information about it. Welcome to another episode of The Other Side of Addiction. I just want to say thank you to Disruptors Media for allowing The Other Side of Addiction to come into their studio, this beautiful, beautiful studio that we're in today to do this show. So I get the honor and the privilege to sit down with Kyle Painter. Kyle, thank you so much for being my guest today.
My pleasure.
And thank you for allowing us to come into your studio and do this show. Greatly appreciated. And today we're going to be talking about amplifying the voices of change makers. You and I, at the beginning, before we started recording, you actually made the comment that it's time we start using our voices to make a change in our community. And there's a ton of people now that's really starting to take grasp of this. And especially those who do podcasts and those who are also guests on podcasts, because our voices, I think, is one of our best, what word do I want to use? I guess an ally. I guess it's a really good ally for us, our voices, and it's a very good piece of equipment to make a change. Is that what you have been finding out with your life now that you've been starting to open up some more?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that the ability to connect with one another through the spoken word, it's so very vital. And I think that's one of the reasons why podcasts like yours, they're growing. You know, just last year, I understand that there was 220,000 new podcasts started. I don't know if you knew that.
I did not know that.
Pretty wild. Well, it makes sense because in a world where people are striving to find connection, to find community, we're also very much isolated within our own little environments, scrolling on our phones. And really, we don't associate with many people. It seems like such a strange paradox where we're more connected than ever before through these amazing technologies. And yet we all feel so lonely, so alone, so isolated from one another. And like the sorts of things that we're going through, no one else is experiencing. And I think for that reason, podcasting in that medium, you know, the spoken word in general, it's been growing quite a bit because podcasting, for example, is four-dimensional. You and I can speak to each other. We can speak to the audience can then speak to us, and the audience can speak to each other. Mm-hmm. So it's a beautiful thing that we can actually form a community through these sorts of dialogues. And my hope and my vision, what I hope to accomplish with you, you know, as my partner, as well as everyone else that I have the pleasure of, you know, associating with, is to form a community of people who are like-minded, who all recognize that there are many, many different societal issues out there. One of the worst being addiction, in my opinion. And if we all come together with greater awareness of what's going on, and we each commit to raising our voices instead of staying silent, because staying silent is staying complicit. If we all decide to do that together, we can do a lot of great things.
Yeah, agreed, 100% on that. You know, and also what's cool about doing these shows and having guests like yourself on here is the people that come on are people who have experienced it. Right? I mean, who else better to interview and to talk to and to learn from than those that have lived in the trenches? Because I've done this myself, and I've heard other people say, you know, when someone's having a problem and they're going through a bunch of stuff, and you're like, yeah, I know how you feel. Okay, do you really? Have you gone through the same type of thing? So I do my best now of not saying that because I don't know how they feel. And we all feel differently, right? We all handle things in different ways. For me to want to know more about what your life was like and understand it, it helps me grow as an individual. And you, by using your voice, you're allowing other individuals out there to go, well, crap, if Kyle can do it, or if so-and-so, this person can do it, so can I. Because when you was in the depths of your stuff, how often did you think you were probably the only one, out of 70 billion people on this earth, you're the only one that was going through what you're going through?
No, I thought that I was the only person. And I guess just to get a little bit of context or background to my story, I was raised extremely devout in my religious tradition, very conservative household, and I loved it. You know, I had the best parents I could ever ask for. And truly to this day, I'm so grateful for everything they've done for me. And just like pretty much everyone in the United States right now, I was introduced extremely early on to pornography. I think that the average age of first introduction to pornography now in the United States is 9 years old.
That early?
Yeah, which is insane to me. I mean, it makes sense though. I mean, it only takes a couple minutes just down the highway to see some billboard with a scantily dressed somebody, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And that just brings you down to a rabbit hole, you know? And for me, I was 11 years old when I first saw things. So with my cousin. My cousin's an idiot, you know? He's playing GTA or whatever it was, right? And I'm like,
Yeah.
holy cow, what are you doing? What are these women charging sex for? This is weird. Anyway, GTA is a bad game for young people. Don't play it. Anyway, so that was my first exposure. And it got me down, again, a rabbit hole, which ended up becoming my addiction to pornography. And yeah, in my very religious household, I knew that this was very, very bad. If you want to go into the reasons of why it's bad, obviously it's bad for so many reasons. It reduces, just speaking from my own personal experience, and I can go into the data otherwise, but it reduces your dopamine production. Your testosterone is lowered as well. Your conceptualization of what healthy intimacy is completely skewed because the stuff that you find on the internet is completely wrong, completely wrong. And so I felt great shame. I refused to tell my parents about it until I was 17 years old. So do the math, that's 6 years of isolation. Just hating myself for continually going back to pornography again and again and again and again. And I would try everything to, try and stop. And I thought to myself, I must be some kind of freak because I'm incapable of doing anything about this. And it was really, really hard, and I did feel like I was alone. And finally, when I worked up the courage to finally tell my parents about it, I realized that my experience is extremely common. It's 89% of young men in that same age bracket are all watching pornography regularly. And here I was thinking that I was one of the only people in the whole world that was consuming this stuff.
Well, and it's so readable now, right? I mean, really, it is. It's everywhere. You can find it on your phones. I was talking to my cousin one time down in St. George, and he's way totally against all that, right? And he's like, there should be a way that we can actually get our child's phones and somehow do some type of lock on it. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I mean, you're someone. Think of it. Think of a way. Talk with people. To make it happen. Because back in my days, I mean, I remember looking through the Sears catalog through the panty and bra section, right? It's like, wow, this is pretty cool, But now it's
you had to go
so
out of
much
your way
different.
to find it back then.
You had to go out of your way to find it back then. Because I remember one of the first parties, well, not one of the first parties, but a party that I went to, and someone's like, hey, we're throwing some porn on in the back. And I'm like, really? I've never seen it before. I'm all excited, right? I got to go check this out because you couldn't get it.
Right,
You couldn't get it. It was so hard. And I remember the first one I watched was on the film, like the projector. Just like at school, they'd put a film in. That's what
so
it was on.
crazy.
It wasn't a DVD. It wasn't a videotape.
I wasn't invited to those parties. Actually.
Well, it was just a normal party,
Okay.
but somebody just brought some and decided to throw it in because there was both men and women there at this party. But yeah, nowadays it's so easy to get your hands onto. Yeah.
It's literally like you're carrying around if I was addicted to alcohol, it's like I have an unlimited supply of alcohol in my pocket 24/7.
Yeah.
Which no wonder there's so many people that suffer from it, But I've been able to discover that pornography addiction or anything of that nature, addictions in general, it's so much more, it's deeper than just the substance itself or the behavior, whatever happens to be. All that is just a facade of something that's deeper underlying within you that needs to be changed and needs to be resolved. Because ultimately what addiction is, it's an escape, And so in a sense, I'm really grateful for the trials that I've had and for the addiction that I had because it was a very obvious indicator that something was deeply wrong in my own psychosis and my own thought process, and that needed to be addressed. And when I finally got down into those different deep root issues, that's when recovery actually happened for me.
Yeah. And you just nailed it, Kyle. I mean, really. And just so our listeners understand this too, you've heard me say on the shows quite a bit, people just don't wake up one day and decide they're just going to be an addict. No, whatever that addiction is going to be. Our brains fire the exact same way. The neurons fire, whether it's porn, whether it's drugs, alcohol, gambling, gaming. Our neurons fire the exact same way in the brain. Again, it's something that we just use as a Band-Aid. That's all it is. What do we do when we cut ourselves or burn ourselves? We put an ointment on, or a Band-Aid, or we wrap it, or whatever. That's exactly what we're doing to our feelings. It's the same damn thing. We're just hiding it in a different way. And then also to go back to thinking that we are the only person, and it's not true. It's because we have that shame. And again, this is just what I've learned from all the guests. I mean, over 300 and something shows, all the guests that I've interviewed, and also going through a lot of my own experience on things. Just to know that's all it is. We're just masking the problem instead of fixing the problem and talking about the problem. Because using our voices, like we talked about at the beginning of the show, my God, that's such a huge part of our recovery and our therapy by getting it out there. I shared with you at the beginning of the show that I had a very bad anger issue in my teens and up into my mid-20s, and it was because I was holding everything in. And I do my best now to let everything out, and I do my best not to be in a butthole about it when I put it out there. However, to me, it's very important that I share what's on my mind.